Excellency, Secretary of State for the Sea, Professor Serrao, President of Portugal's Institute of Meteorology, and also representing Portugal with WMO. Dear colleagues, dear friends, first of all, let me apologize for not speaking in Portuguese, so I will use English, which is the lingua franca of our times. It is a pleasure for me to be once again in Lisbon on this very auspicious ceremony commemorating the 65th anniversary of Portugal's Institute of Meteorology. And on behalf of the whole WMO community, I would like to express appreciation to Professor Serrao for the kind invitation to participate in this historic celebration. Your country is indeed, and I think that was said in your speech, is indeed one of our founding members. Since WMO was established on the 23rd of March 1950, and Portugal joined WMO on the 15th of January 1951, so less than a year later. So really you are one of the founding members. But as was said in the earlier presentation, your meteorological experience commenced long before 1946. It was mentioned the weather observation made in Madeira, in Funchal, I believe, going back to the 18th century. Also in the about 1780, and I will probably mispronounce this name, but Francisco de Oliveira Barbosa and Bento Sanchez Dorta made pioneer observational campaigns in Brazil. And actually, a meteorological observatory was established in Rio de Janeiro during the short time where it was the only European capital outside of Europe. So it was Europe. And as a consequence of international commitments assumed by Portugal at the first International Meteorological Conference held in Brussels in 1853, the observatory, Louis Meteorological Observatory, was established in the same year, I understand, on the ground of the Botanical Garden, which is very interesting because now WMO is located close to the Botanical Garden in Geneva, so we have a close link with botanics as well. And since the Brussels conference was especially oriented towards meteorological protection for ships at sea, so very appropriate Secretary of State that you are Secretary of State for the sea. That was our original area of expertise. But not to also to mention the centuries-old Portuguese seafaring tradition. You have the oldest tradition of seafaring of any European country, and certainly the logs of your ships provide very valuable information also on even before traditional observation. So this observatory, which I mentioned, was especially fitted with light and flag signals for ships, but it also contributed to meteorological research and training. And I understand it was there that your very first weather forecasting for the media began in 1865. So in 4 years from now, you will have another anniversary to celebrate, 150th anniversary of providing services to the media. Excellency, dear colleagues, statistics are showing that about 90% of all natural disasters worldwide are hydrometeorological in their origin. History, however, recalls that the most dreadful impacts on your beautiful city were due to an earthquake in 1755, followed by a tsunami and an awesome fire, all of which ravaged Lisbon over a very short period. And this is certainly very much reminding us of what happened in Japan just a few months ago. Of course, there was no nuclear plant at that time, but still, what it shows is that unfortunately we have to deal with disaster prevention in a multi-hazard way. You cannot just deal with these issues in isolated fashion. But it shows also the depth of your experience and exposure to these events. But since there's also a strong community of Portuguese-speaking WMO members, which Portugal has successfully contributed to foster. I can mention here that many of them have also suffered very harsh natural disasters, like floods, droughts, storm surges, to name just a few examples. But it is, however, very encouraging to note that over the last years, they've joined to meet the challenges of natural hazards by sharing resources and by sharing experiences. WMO, as you probably know, has been increasingly cooperating with the Climate and Environmental Issues Agency of Portuguese-speaking countries and Macau, China, CRIA, where you have taken a leading role. WMO and CRIA subscribed a wide-ranging memorandum of understanding, including in particular cooperation in the development and implementation of the CRIA strategic plan and support to the Regional Center for Meteorological Training in Angola for its facilities to be used preferentially to national meteorological services of Portuguese-speaking countries. And I know that because of the events which happened in Angola, the center was deactivated, but really it is indeed a priority and which we've been discussing how to reactivate these facilities. And we have also been pleased to sponsor the participation of CRIA members in many of the WMO activities. Portugal also has been maintaining well-established cooperation in meteorology with Ibero-American countries, as well as with China through the Macau Meteorological and Geophysical Bureau. Moreover, WMO was represented at a high level during the first and second international workshop on climate and natural resources in Portuguese-speaking country, which took place in 2008 in Sal, in Cape Verde, and in November 2010 in Portugal, in Bragança, and some of the key objectives at these meetings were to take into account international concerns on the global nature of climate and environmental issues and their impacts, to promote the relevant strategic partnership and also to mobilize the appropriate resources. The 16th Congress of WMO recently, in June this year, decided in particular that we should develop a global framework for climate services. And this was an issue which originated from the Third World Climate Conference, which took place in Geneva about 2 years ago. And this recommendation was a unanimous one. And if you remember the very difficult discussion internationally about climate in Copenhagen, in Cancun, the word unanimous is indeed a very encouraging word. So we took a unanimous decision to develop this global framework. The idea is really to bridge the gap between you, the providers of information, and Your Excellency and all the users, the people who make decisions. So really to provide decision makers with the right information so that when decisions are made, and we don't tell you what to decide, but that the decisions are made are based on the best possible information. So this is a very important thing that we do for climate, what we have been doing over the last 65 years for meteorology. So this is, I think, a very, very exciting development. And for that purpose, to develop that, we shall convene for the first time in the history of WMO an extraordinary Congress of WMO. It will take place in 1 year from now in Geneva with only one subject. This is the development of this global framework for climate services. And we look forward to your full participation, the full participation of Portugal in this vital new undertaking, for which we are in the process of mobilizing additional resources. We know that many countries are facing a very, very difficult financial situation, not only in Europe, but also in many other countries around the world. And this is why, because precisely of this difficult financial situation, that it is necessary to strengthen internal cooperation even further. It is because of this difficult financial situation that it's essential that resources are not wasted, but are used in the best way. And we think that investment in this development, investment in disaster prevention, investment in meteorology, investment in climate are indeed very good investment to avoid wastage of resources. But as you are aware as well, there are huge expectations. And there's expectation for more and more sophisticated services, for better and better prediction on all kinds of time ranges. Almost all socio-economic sectors are affected in one way or the other by weather, water, or climate events. And I could mention everything. I know the Secretary said you are under the Ministry of Agriculture. Agriculture is only one of the key application sectors of meteorology and climate information. And we have been reminded over the last few months by the tragic drought which is occurring in the Greater Horn of Africa, how important it is to have the best possible information to minimize the impact for the people. So in order to develop this global framework, since we cannot do everything at once, it was decided that we should focus on 4 initial priorities. These priorities will be disaster prevention. It will be agriculture, meaning food security. It will be water as well, but it will also be a priority on strengthening the infrastructure, observation, exchange of observation, prediction. We cannot provide good service if we don't get the right information. So, to address the challenges of the 21st century, we believe that it will be essential to strengthen further the international cooperation in meteorology, hydrology, and climatology. And the role of the Met Service in all countries of the planet, and I cannot think of any exception, will be very, very important indeed. And that's why I thank you and through you, the government, for the support provided to these activities. They are indeed essential activities, and you can be proud of the work which has been done over the last 65 years. I'm sure the society is expecting even more from you in the next 50 years. So I won't be here to celebrate your 100 years anniversary, but I'm sure some of the colleagues in this room will be there, and I wish you really a very, very bright future for the service of society and its citizens. So, Excellency, Professor Jarraud, dear colleagues and friends, muito obrigado.